we're going to try to make it a question that both of the candidates can answer, and we'll give both of them an opportunity to answer any questions that you have. Does anyone have a question? Yes.
The town's employee costs have been rising year after year, which is contributing to that deficit that's going to happen in 10 years. What would you do to control the permanent operating costs?
Woo. So, yeah, that's a good question. Costs are rising across the board. Inflation is there. The idea that we control costs strictly through employees and taking their wage or keeping their wage low is not a good policy. So I think the balance is not only looking at the cost associated with employees and the employees' rise, it's also what services we're providing, what those people are providing out there. Make sure that we're getting the service to the community that the community is actually looking for. If we're not, then we ought to move on. The second piece to that is, once again, revenue generation. So how do we generate more revenue to cover the costs of inflation? Hopefully inflation slows down, but I don't see that coming. We will have increased costs. We should also have increased revenue.
Well, as project manager at my company, I'll tell you that every day we have production meetings where we evaluate jobs coming up, the resources available, and the people required to do those jobs. One of my first tasks, if I were elected alderman, would be to do the same thing with the town, to run it like a business. Go to the production meetings, but call them staff meetings. Find out who's doing what, where's the inefficiency, what issues aren't being addressed. So if there's too many resources in place, that will certainly come out in those discussions. And that's, if there's too much staff, then certainly it needs to be tailored back. As a conservative, I'm certainly against big government. And if the town of Farragut is getting too big for its britches, it needs to be curtailed.
Reagan.
The town of Farragut, last I checked, is about 80% of its revenue from permits being pulled for people working on their homes. How would you feel about relinquishing the need, people need permits to do lesser work on their home below a certain value? Like if I were to redo the back porch on my house, I need to pull a permit, make sure that it stands up to code. How would you each feel about removing the permitting requirements for building in Farragut in some areas?
Well, I've done permits all my life, so I have a keen understanding of the importance of them, especially in the commercial environment where it becomes a life safety issue. If you don't do something correctly and somebody gets killed, that's a problem. If you have a homeowner trying to do the same thing, maybe watching HGTV and seeing how it's done, when actually that's not how it's done, that's the importance of the permitting process. So everybody needs to fall under that regardless.
The idea of changing ordinance or code for business or for permitting in general is wide open. I mean, our job is to look at recommendations that comes before the board and determine whether the ordinance or the zoning or the permitting should be changed. I happen to agree with Mr. Wiberly. We have ordinances in place, or building a permit code. I forgot what it is. It's the International Code of ICC, whatever. We have that in place and we've adopted it for a reason. Our community has asked us to do that. So if our community in turn wants us to reduce those, that is part of the process that you go through as an alderman. You look at whether those changes that comes from the community is something that we want to entertain. And I think you're going to find that most people aren't so concerned with the permit, what's required of the permit. They're more concerned with the process of getting the permit and moving through. So I think that's a great place for improvement, to get better. The process of getting a permit from start to finish, I don't think the quality of work or what's required in the permit should be reduced or changed. But if the community wants that, then we push that.
Yes, ma'am.
You both spoke on the importance of communication, and I was just wondering, how do you intend to communicate with the town and with your board?
Good to go again. Well, I've already started that. Thanks for the question. When I was appointed, I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to have that connection. I'm probably not the smartest person in this room. There are some smart people that are going to tell me or give me comments and guide me into what's best for the community. So my goal is, and I started it immediately, was meeting with constituents twice a month. We talk about whatever they want. So and on top of that, I will meet with anybody and talk about any concerns they have with the town. I've started pushing through in January. I tried to get the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in our strategic planning meeting to develop a communications plan or have a communications audit. And that didn't go over well. I didn't explain myself well to my peers on the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So I've been sticking with that. So from January, February, and then in March, I got some feedback and additional movement from the board. I presented it in a board meeting. So we're going through with a communications plan. It's coming out soon. I'm going to be meeting with the administration on what that plan is going to look like. Already developed one and handed it to them, but it was kind of too deep. It was more operational than it was policy. But so we're going to push this communications plan to make the town better at getting information out to the community in general. And I'm going to continue doing what I do and invite people to come to my open office hours.
Well, I can ask the question of the audience. How would anybody feel if you got a letter from the town said they're gonna take your property by eminent domain?
Yay!
That happened to me, and of course, it was a great big surprise. How would you feel if you found out your zoning had been changed without your knowledge? That you had to go to the KGIS website to find out that it had? Nobody bothered to tell us. At one point, when they were debating the traffic safety ordinance, I suggested that if the town is going through a neighborhood and gonna do a traffic safety study and alter a traffic pattern and put in sidewalks, that you need to notify somehow those residents. And of course, that suggestion was not taken up by the town. So I personally have witnessed it, and I think it's totally unacceptable that the town does not reach out more to the people affected, starting at the planning phase. I mean, they get so far along in their design phase, by the time it's finished, you have no say in it. That people need to come forward at the beginning. And I would make sure that the town staff does that very thing.
Well, I'm gonna allow one more question. Go ahead, sir.
We had the sewer leak, and while I think the town did everything fine around Founders Park, the town let the people down that live on Turkey Creek Road, where I live, on May 21st, May 22nd, and May 25th. The E. coli pollution in the water in front of Inverness, Bridgewater, and Lake Haven was twice the EPA standard to close the water. TDEC failed us, and the town did not act. Why?
There was a question there.
Well, again, my company deals specifically with biohazard remediations, mostly in residential and commercial environments. What we have in place is a whole catalog of standard operating procedures. When something goes up, we know where to go in the file to find out what to do. We have training in PPE with all the employees so that they're not exposed to any biohazards. You know, last week I looked up on the town website, just out of curiosity, is there any reference to shelters? So, I mean, what's the next big event that could strike Farragut? Probably a tornado, flood? Well, I was just curious, are there any designated tornado shelters in Farragut? Well, there's no reference to it on the site. So, from what I can tell, the town is ill-prepared to deal with calamities. There's no specific policies in place. There's no chain of command, who's doing what. You know, when we leave for the weekend, there's a designated person who's gonna answer the phone. And that seemed to not happen during this event. Somebody was missing. Well, that should have been identified. And after the chain of command, you have roles and responsibilities. You know, if somebody says that creek needs to be closed, well, roll out the landscaping staff in their trucks, get them down there and close the frickin' river. I mean, it's really that simple. So I just see that there's been a lack of running it like it should be.
I'm gonna agree with you, Mike. The response to the spill, the sewer leak, it was disheartening to me as well. Going through that entire process and learning things about the spill and Turkey Creek has kind of changed my opinion on a lot of things. Now, we do have an emergency management plan. We do have after-hours calls. We do numbers. That's all out there. If you want to see what the emergency management plan is, you just call up the town. They'll ask you to do a FOIA request. It's out there. You'll get a redacted copy of it. We do have a person who's in charge of that. In this instance, we're going to go back, and I've asked for it several times, to do let's call it a post-mortem for lack of a review of what went right, what went wrong, what we should change, how we can change it. And that will be moved through the process. But I do want to make sure that everybody understands that the authority having jurisdiction in this instance was not the town of Farragut. And we only had so much that we could do. It wasn't the town of Farragut's, I don't want to say place, but the information that was coming out from the utility. I wish, I want, and I asked for more information to come out, and if you saw, I did put out my own communications. That's going to be corrected as the communication plan comes out. One thing I want to leave, I want to give it to you, and you're going to be angry, and I'm angry. Turkey Creek has been polluted for years, and I didn't find out how bad it was until this incident happened. Those numbers that you're talking about, twice EPA standards, you probably ought to go back a couple years and look at what's been in Turkey Creek for the past 25 years. So I think there's opportunity there to get better. I think the town's going to do a review of what we did. I'm gonna have to get my cohorts on the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to make sure that administration, because I can't just go in there and say, you're gonna do this, but that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen get that information. It might come out in a workshop, it might come out, we might have a workshop on this. That's what I would push for, where we go top to bottom on how that incident happened. We do exercise our emergency management plan. I'm gonna tell you another little piece. They exercised it about 4 months ago. The plan that they did was a chemical spill in Turkey Creek from that dry cleaner right over there. So they went through it. As soon as we knew we had a sewer leak, the incident response plan was put in place, and within hours it was enacted. And that part of it was really well. We didn't do good communicating, and we didn't do good on answering the phone call. So I hope that answered.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.